The Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Welcome to the SpotTrack.com podcast. I'm Kevin Sylvester along with Paul Peck from BuffaloSportsPage.com and other things. And joining us, of course, the founder of SpotTrack.com, Mike Giannetti. This is the busy, fun time of the year. We're going to talk some NBA. We're going to talk some Major League Baseball. But we're going to start with football. And Julio Jones, the wide receiver position in football. And, Paul, if I told you to draft a receiver today, would Julio Jones be the number one guy you'd take out of a current roster?
Yeah, I think so. And the reason I would say that, I mean, you could argue Antonio Brown. He's the other guy that pops into my head. But Julio Jones, at his size and ability, is the prototypical wide receiver that every NFL team wants right now. 6'3", physical, big, strong, fast. So he brings everything that you want at the wide receiver position. He's finding that he's not getting as much love as he is from this crowd.
Right. So that's I think two things. The wide receiver position has been very interesting, as we've discussed in the past here, and I think there's two scenarios going on here. One obviously is the contract, and we'll discuss that as we've got our piece here about that. But I think the big thing to note about Julio, and really plenty of other wide receivers, that have had prominence in the past 3-4 years, Julio's touchdowns have dropped drastically.
And he was always like a killer red zone guy.
Huge. And the injuries have piled up, and for sure his position on the field has changed as he's aged, and the injuries have sort of hampered him. But to me, that is the biggest red flag right now with Atlanta's unwillingness to just throw him money right now. And we're seeing this. Here's the thing. Generally what happens is, if a wide receiver starts declining in terms of their production, like on the touchdown statistic, it's because somebody else is picking up the load. That's not happening in Atlanta, right? There's no tight end taking over that red zone, and there's no
don't really have a big
Mohamed
number two,
Sanu's
right?
not taking away touchdowns from Julio Jones, right? I mean, certainly, and look they've drafted Calvin Ridley, right? They've got two monster running backs that they put in place. What they've done is they've altered their game plan to sort of go away from Julio Jones, because he's been unreliable. He can't stay on the field for 16 weeks. And the past 2 years when he's been on the field, he hasn't been a red zone threat to them.
Yeah, he makes a great catch in the Super Bowl to get a first down. All I had to do was run 3 times and then kick, and they would have beat the Patriots. I'm sorry, I digress.
Angst.
I'm still, may have
Still
had
a little bitter about that one, aren't you?
Well, may have had a square issue, Paul.
Oh, I see.
Anyhow, I digress.
But before we get to the contract,
it was for a lot of money. That's all I'm going to say.
I think we all figured that out. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think before we get to the contract part of this, though, I think the interesting thing to talk about here is how people are valuing these wide receivers, right? Because as we see these spread offenses come into play, you're going to see less and less yardage as stats, right? You're going to see less and less receptions, just because the ball is getting spread around more.
Right.
The touchdown is going to become one of the most important stats to value a player on, and if you can't get yourself open in the red zone in the final third of this field, you're going to be negated quite heavily. And I think that's where Julio Jones is right now. He's a player who he's fine, between the 20s to get you down the field a little bit. He's a first down, obviously a top first down option for them. But when it comes to the red zone, he's been in decline.
Now, if I'm Julio's agent, I want to respond. If you're sitting across from Thomas Dimitroff, the GM of the Falcons, I'm going to say, well, wait a minute. The guy's established himself as the best red zone guy in the NFL. Well, what do you think is going to happen? He doesn't get single coverage anymore. Mm-hmm. Fade passes are no longer an option because they don't let him go one-on-one. There's so much coverage towards him because of who he is and what he is. Of course, logically, his touchdowns are going to decrease. That's just the nature of the NFL game.
I guess if I'm Thomas Dimitroff, I'm saying exactly, and that's why we're not paying him extra money, right? I mean, that's the answer. The answer is,
so it's not really Julio's fault. You could say
it's not Julio's fault, but he's 30 in 8 months, and that's just the nature of how this is going to go, right? They didn't draft Calvin Ridley by accident.
Right.
I mean, he's already done his part in terms of Thomas Dimitroff, kind of filling up the space going forward. It makes no sense, in my opinion, to give this guy more than, the $40-some million he's worth over 3 years. So let's talk about this, because this is a 6-year contract, and we've talked about 5- and 6-year contracts in the NFL many times on this show, and, I'm going to keep doing it, as long as players keep signing them, because this is a situation where this is also Julio Jones' fault, and his agent, obviously. They should know better. And that's what I'm going to say. That's my answer to this.
That those
they
are
should
just
know
not
better.
coming around the NFL. They're not signing until you're 37 years old.
That's right. Look at he signed this at age 26. He signed this in 2015. 3 years ago, this was probably still just fine, right? But in the last 18 months, that's just not the way it's working anymore. And that's a positive thing for for both sides, for the teams and the players. It's not great for agents. It's not. And my answer to that is also going to be too bad. But look at he's in a generation, these 2015 contracts, especially with wide receivers, where you had the fluff. You had 2 good years of cash flow, a decent third year, and then everything else after that was fluff. And he's into the fluff right now. And he's into a badly structured fluff situation. Okay, he made a decent amount of money in year 1. He made okay money year 2. He didn't make great money last year either. He made $11.5 million last year in terms of cash.
Paltry.
Right? Right.
Comparison.
All of this is in air quotes,
right.
obviously,
Yes, yeah.
right? But in terms of, the Hopkins and the Devontae Adams and those guys who signed contracts, those guys are making 15, 16 on average a year. So if you're putting Julio Jones at the top of your wide receiver list, $11.5 million and now $10.5 million this year, of course he's going to gripe about that. But he signed this contract, and he signed this contract assuming he was going to be able to get out of it this year, and he's not. Atlanta's not going anywhere because they're certainly happy with a $12.9 million cap hit for a guy who's not scoring touchdowns, right? I mean, they're not going to increase that, and there's been a lot of speculation about throwing him a signing bonus to sort of make him happy, and all that does is add dead cap to this situation. And we've talked about that. That's a situation you don't want to get yourself into if you don't know where he's going to be in 2 or 3 years.
They being the Falcons, they put their money into the quarterback, Matt Ryan.
They did,
and that's and
the running back.
Right.
They've got the highest paid multi-year running back on this team right now. By
doing that and drafting Calvin Ridley, the writing's on the wall.
That's right. They put their foot
You're
down.
not getting a new contract. So here's my question with that, and I know Paul wanted to jump in with something, but let me just say this. So does that make Julio Jones, after this year, a trade target?
He's one right now, in my opinion. Right now. Certainly, they're going to wait a year because of Calvin Ridley's development and just the fact that they can win. They're an NFC favorite right now, just based on everything we've spoken to. And Matt Ryan's signed long term. They're going to want to give him the best opportunity to go and make that money work, right? Because certainly they paid him well. My point in all of this is Julio Jones has no gripe here.
Yeah,
he doesn't.
And as crazy as somebody who's a Falcons fan listening to this is going, oh my, what are you talking? Yeah. You can't talk about trading Julio Jones. This was my question to you, Mike, and Kevin set me up for it perfectly there by talking about trading him. We have reached the era in the NFL, and you and I we've talked about this a lot, where you get what you got 7 good years out of Julio Jones. He was one of the best in the league. He's 30 years old. Next. And I think that's what the Falcons, I think what's the unsaid part of all this is the Falcons are saying, you were great, you're still pretty good, but you're not going to be great anymore. We're not going to tie ourselves to paying you, and we've seen this all around the NFL. Is that the overriding picture of what is going on in this negotiation?
No question.
Okay.
No question. It's just that time, right?
You've gotten everything you can. You've gotten
the
the best you can get out of him.
That's right.
Listen, if they trade him, they can sign a Hall of Famer, Terrell Owens.
He just ran a 4.4 40-yard dash, right, at 44.
That unbelievable?
So I did a tweet where I put some notable free agents out there, and I added him to the list, and it did not go well. That was not a comical situation.
Put Jerry Rice and some of those guys on there too.
Listen, and
Tim Brown.
It would be, we can all kid aside. It would be a remarkable story.
T.O.?
Yes, to play again in the National Football League after being inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
It's not happening. There is nobody that's going to sign him.
Des Bryant or T.O.? Who goes first?
All right, hang on a second. You wouldn't give Terrell Owens a workout? No? You don't think he could
He's
catch?
44.
Is he still doing sit-ups in his
so
driveway?
I don't care how fast he runs or how many sit-ups he can do. It doesn't make him an NFL player. And at 44, at a physically demanding position and everything you're getting with T.O., who would want to go anywhere near that?
Third down receiver.
Oh,
you don't think he could contribute?
No, I do not.
Apparently, you haven't watched the Bills.
Or put it this way, he can't contribute significantly better as a third down receiver than a second-year veteran that I'm paying $800,000 a year to.
I love how the conversation about trading Julio Jones just
Has
turned
turned
into
into
signing
Terrell
Terrell Owens.
I wanted to find a way.
Yeah, let's go back. Let's get
No,
back
no,
into
this is good stuff.
it.
I wanted to find a way to work Terrell Owens in.
Well, you did all right.
All right.
And I took it hook,
You know
line,
what?
and sinker.
You know what? Listen, it's 44. He's not 54. All
It's
right?
44. How many receivers have ever played in the NFL at 44?
None, and that's the point.
Oh, come on.
I think
you're
that's
nuts.
the point for Now I know he's
You're
doing it
nuts.
because he needs money.
The other thing
right?
about Julio,
right? Terrell, how much money has Terrell Owens made in his career?
Career earnings. Go ahead. Let's go. Let's hear the guesses. I'll give you the seasons.
I'm going to say career earnings for Terrell Owens.
16 seasons.
I'm going to say he made $85 million.
yeah, I was thinking a little lower, but I would say in the 60 or 70 million range.
And I'm going to say he spent $90 million.
He had a lot of one-year deals towards the end of his career too.
Terrell Owens, $79.6 million.
Good call,
All
Kevin.
right.
Nailed it.
And he
Good
spent
call.
89 or whatever,
probably,
right? I mean,
yes.
he played in the Arena League a couple of years ago just because he needed money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
That's what this is about. Let's not kid ourselves. And he figured if it goes and plays a one-year deal.
It's about his
Whatever.
ego too. I mean, which
Yeah,
is
but just take all that aside. It would be remarkable at 44 if he could play and contribute on a National Football League team.
Absolutely would be
Okay.
remarkable. I just don't think it's ever going to happen. Back to
I
Julio.
think someone will give him a chance though because teams want to win, and if he could run a 4.40, if they could give him a look, whatever he's doing to stay in shape. I'm just saying, the guy's a Hall of Famer for a reason because he's a great receiver. Right, all the other stuff
At
aside,
age 27,
he's a great receiver, and it would be okay. Well, I can see that I'm not going to convince old
You're
guy
not
in the corner
convincing me.
here
No, you're
that
not
hey,
convincing
something different could happen. Like players are in better shape now, and they can have longer careers, and so on and so forth. I'm not advocating. Listen, I'm not saying like, wow, this is great for football that this guy gets elected to the Hall of Fame and he's not going to go now and he's going to try to make a comeback here. I'm just saying if he were able to make a comeback, it'd be pretty remarkable and a great story.
How late did Jerry Rice play? He was up there, right?
Probably into his early 40s.
40, right?
And wasn't he dancing around? And I'm using dancing because he did Dancing with the Stars, but wasn't he dancing around a return?
Yeah.
Last year, right?
Yeah, he put it out there.
Yeah, he put it
kept
out
himself
there.
in shape.
Right, and people were talking about well, yeah, Jerry Rice could probably catch 30 or 40 balls in the NFL.
That's right.
He'd be a good player for the John Gruden should sign Jerry Rice back up. But yet
John Gruden might.
But hang on, but Terrell Owens is talking about it, and that's a terrible idea. Why?
Because you love to hate him.
Yeah.
Okay.
And let's not let Terrell off the hook for creating that as well, too. All right, back to Julio Jones. And the last thing I want to say to you, Mike, is we've spent a lot of time talking about that great wide receiver class of 2013, and none of them have really gotten paid. And it goes to where Julio Jones is, which is the position is not getting blank checked anymore.
Right. That's right. And really, the issue is that the ones that did get paid took these contracts that just they weren't built to last.
Right.
Right. And he's being forced to make it last. And structurally, it just doesn't have the cash flow to keep up with his demands. And again, my answer is too bad. Right. And what we're seeing shorter contracts now so that doesn't happen on both sides of the fence. Or we're seeing better structured contracts. Take a look at Mike Evans. Take a look at Jarvis Landry. Take a look at the right column on Spot Track. That's the cash flow. And what you're seeing is more consistency. You're seeing a nice payday in year one because of that signing bonus, except for Mike Evans because Tampa doesn't do signing bonuses. So you're seeing a big roster bonus or a big signing bonus. So get him paid right in year one and then spread out 2 through 5 or 2 through 4 so that it's basically even, so that it never goes too high and never goes too low, so that there's really no reason to get to this point where we are with Julio Jones.
Yeah, and the broader picture, you already alluded to it, the position itself, the offenses are spread out more. Yeah. There are more receivers. Every college starts 3 and 4 wide receivers. It's become, as passing has become, even at the high school level, is a larger pool of available players, and it's a very physical, demanding position. As much as you might not think they don't get hit as much anymore, we've seen a lot of those guys with foot problems. It's a very running down field as much as they run, as hard as they cut. It's become a position that it does not always last as long. And those, I think, are all related topics that come back to Julio Jones.
It's getting to the point now, and this will be a very interesting season on the field to sort of watch this. But I'm interested to see how many other teams start to go to this spread offense. How many other teams start to look like the Rams and the Eagles and the Chiefs and these teams that are really spreading the ball around. Because if it starts to really blossom and you've got half the league doing it, then the major wide receiver contract is going to be gone. And a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. needs to take cash right now. And if it's not from the Giants, get me out of here because I'm going to a team who will pay me, who's got massive cap space, who can give me 2 years of top pay, so that I can make my bank and then go from there. Because this is becoming a running back situation is what we're getting towards. We're getting to a situation where, there's going to be a 7-8 year cap on these guys' massive career. And that's where they make their money. And they're not going to make it on the rookie contract. We know that. So if they're going to be, rookie wage scaled plus a 5th-year option plus a franchise tag, that's 6 years right there. So if you can get your massive contract in year 5 or year 4 even, get it and let it ride out and then, deal with your consequences from there. But that's where we are.
All right, massive contracts is a great segue to understanding the NBA offseason, which
Don't we always use the phrase massive contracts when we talk about anything that's NBA related?
And in an article at Spottrack.com, Financial Facts for NBA Trades, Free Agency, and the Draft, this is the Reader's Digest. Look that up, kids. Cliff Notes. Look that up, too, kids. Google search version.
That's right. Cliff Notes.
Cliff Notes version here of what is to come here.
By the way, do those still exist?
Yes.
Cliff Notes?
Yes.
Yeah, but they're all online, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Paul, you can buy term papers.
Yeah, the yellow
online
books are
now.
gone, I think.
That's true.
Yeah, the little yellow books at the drugstore are gone.
We all relied a lot on those back in the day, didn't we?
Yes, absolutely.
Here, read War and Peace. Have a report ready to go for it next week. Is there a Cliff Notes for that?
I use that, by the way, I used War and Peace on a putt read once at the playoffs on the PGA Tour radio. I said, this is a War and Peace putt, a long, tough read. And
Very good.
anyways,
That is how you draw the users in right there.
that's right. You bring them in like, engaging. Oh, yeah, you got to engage them. Like, wow, this must be a really tough putt. All right. Let's talk about the NBA offseason because you have the draft tomorrow. We're recording this on a Wednesday morning. The draft is June 21st. And there's picks can be traded, but because this is kind of the first order of business, right? The draft and trades at the draft. And what we've seen over the years, for those who follow the NBA draft, is, hey, Minnesota drafted John Jones, and Washington drafted Joe Blow. And then an hour later, wait, they trade the rights to John Jones and Joe Blow along with, backup center Jimmy Johnson, whatever, to throw them in there. All these trades happen in the NBA, but they don't happen before because you always wonder, well, why didn't they just trade the pick?
Right. So that's the uniqueness of this draft. In the NFL draft, you're seeing these things happen in real time, right? And the league has to approve these trades literally on the fly. So that makes the NFL draft like the crazy chaotic thing that it is.
Hang on a second.
What?
The NFL draft's a TV show. You don't think those trades are already predetermined?
They're
just don't announce them until then because they want to announce it live on television. Just my thought.
I think maybe that stuff's written up, but I think it doesn't get sent to the league.
Because it always depends on who might have gone before.
Yeah,
I think every team, if our guy, and you see, if our guy is there, we're willing to give this to you for that.
Yeah, but the league knows, the league has a heads up. If this happens, we're going to do it, because to approve a trade,
Yeah, but
the attorney's got to look through everything.
There's no contracts or anything that have to be approved in an NFL trade. It's just to swap a draft pick. So as long as you have it and you can give it up, where the NBA one becomes a little more involved.
But the NBA, everybody's there in one place. The NFL, they're not.
Right.
So that's why I'm saying they have to have a heads up because all the GMs are back at their home base. They're not sitting there at the table, unlike the NHL or the NBA where everybody's right there.
So
anyhow,
so with the NBA though, basically what happens is you can trade draft picks up until 6 p.m. tonight, right? Wednesday the 20th, which is the day before the draft. So that can happen. You can still spin your first round pick. The Cleveland Cavaliers can spin that number 8 pick tomorrow for whatever they need to do if they're going to do it, and they can still do it during the draft. But like you said, they're going to have to draft a player at 8 and then trade that player to another team for something else. That's just how they works. They don't do any in-draft trading of picks like the NFL and you see the other sports doing.
And by the way, the player who gets drafted does not have to give the hat back from the first team is drafted
that's right.
by. He gets a new
it's
hat.
It's always that weirdly awkward moment, and when you watch the NBA draft, that they'll interview the guy, and then 10 minutes later he's gone there. Well, why are we wasting our time? Why were you asking about how he fits in to the Cleveland Cavaliers when he is never going to play there? It's weird because we're so ingrained in how the NFL draft works.
So let's actually talk about why this happens, because we can move right forward to the trade process, which is an unbelievably gigantic pile of chaos mess, right? I mean, it is a legal document to read to understand how these trades work with all the scenarios and the finances and the exceptions and there's so many different things that go into play. I've put like 100 words into this for you to read because what I've done is I've taken the most popular things that happen and I've given you the scenarios, things that may happen in the next month or so based on the sort of rumors we're hearing here. But basically, the long and short of this, to your point here, is the reason that these things can't be approved on the fly during the draft is there are mathematical formulas in place. You can only take on so much if you give out so much, right? The money sort of has to sync up in terms of players you send out and players you acquire. So there's some real crunching that goes into play in terms of the salaries that are moving around during a trade to make sure that it's a legal trade, because there have been many times where trades have been deemed illegal based on miscalculations and things like that. And so it's a more complicated process for sure than the other leagues deal with. We had a trade today. I'll sort of speak to that as an example of how this works, right? We saw Dwight Howard go from Charlotte to Brooklyn for Timothy Mozgov. A couple of bigs getting flopped around. Well, Dwight Howard has $7 million more in cap than Timothy Mozgov. So just on paper, flat like that, that's an illegal trade, okay? And the fact that 2 draft picks were thrown in with Mozgov mean nothing. Draft picks mean nothing in trades, which to me is a little baffling because first-round picks are slotted. Second-round picks, you can sort of assume they're slots. So I think you could put a financial weight to them, but legally speaking, draft picks mean nothing in terms of this mathematical formula. It's literally just salaries. So what does that mean? It means in terms of the math and basically how we work it out with the formula, Charlotte's going to have to send more. Brooklyn's going to have to send more, whether that's cash or more players, to make this thing a legal trade. Just as it is right now, it's not legal. So there's going to be more coming. So that's the kind of thing you need to watch for when these trades start to happen.
And by more, you mean more players with more money.
More money. In terms of the math I did quickly, they owe about $3 million more right now.
Okay. In
order to make that Dwight Howard trade legal.
Dwight Howard's becoming the modern-day version of Keith Van Horn.
No question. And it's the big man. It's a big man syndrome. It's a big man who can't shoot.
How many teams is this now for Dwight Howard?
Third? Fourth?
No.
I was thinking more like 6 or 7.
There's the Orlando Magic.
No, is it that much?
Hang on. Let me try and guess this. Orlando Magic, right? That's where he started.
Houston Rockets.
Became Superman. No, didn't he go to L.A. first?
Oh, I think
Lakers.
right.
Lakers, then the Houston Rockets, then he Charlotte.
Nope.
Right?
Well,
There's somebody before Charlotte?
Yeah.
Oh, wait a second.
Orlando.
No.
Did you say Orlando already, right?
I said Orlando. Hang on. Oh, my gosh.
Julio Jones.
Atlanta, huh?
He was the Atlanta. That's right. He was Atlanta Hawks, right?
Yeah.
Then Charlotte,
and
right?
Now Brooklyn.
6. It's a 6 team.
Crazy.
This guy was, the next big star.
Crazy.
And part of like his reputation is not a great one.
Yeah.
Right? All from Houston. It didn't go well.
Got ugly. He got older. He's a kind of a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
And the big men needed to do everything now in this league. So he's just sort of getting phased out in terms of how that's working. But yeah, this is trade number 1 of hopefully a dozen or so based on everything we're hearing. And
well, the Hornets might be moving Kemba Walker to Cleveland, right?
I've heard this. That's got to be contingent though on some things, don't you think?
Yeah, I think there are some things that are going to happen.
Yeah.
He'd look good with LeBron.
So let's talk about this because then after the draft, which is tomorrow,
any NBA talk always goes to LeBron.
Of course, it's transitioning, right?
Because everything from the league will happen once he decides what he's doing.
Right. So that's the next phase in the offseason here, which is the option deadline, which is June 29th, right? So a week after the draft, that's the watch for most of these teams and the LeBron watch that we've all been dealing with here. LeBron's got the $35.6 million option. There's some other players out there with some decent options to watch. But, the summer's going to sort of flex as LeBron goes here. So, after the draft, and, I actually think we'll know a little bit more tomorrow, right? Because based on what Cleveland does with this number 8 pick,
right?
I think we're going to know a little bit.
You think that pick will give us an idea?
If it happens.
If it happens.
Right? I mean, isn't that sort of the layer here? I mean, if they think they can keep this guy, or at least they've got one more year with this guy, then doesn't that number 8 pick get you something like Kemba Walker right now? Right?
You would think so.
Now, Kemba Walker's a future point guard.
They would want somebody to help now.
Yeah.
Right. If they keep the pick or try to move up, then they're saying we need our next guy.
I wouldn't discount anything right now. I mean, because Cleveland has to be thinking all in for 2018, right? Because I think they've got a decent shot to have LeBron back for one more year. I don't know if any situation out there is perfect. We've talked about this, so If they go and flip that pick, if they go and pick a player that complements LeBron James with that pick, rather than replaces him or sort of takes over the future, we're going to know a little bit more, I think, just tomorrow night, just sort of where they stand. And then obviously the deadline of June 29th will be the big day. If he opts out, who knows? If he opts in, that certainly doesn't mean he's staying. Obviously, his tradability is available up and through the February deadline. So, nothing's going to be safe with LeBron in Cleveland, from now until February. But we'll know a little bit more over the next week in terms of what he does, what Cleveland's doing, and there are other teams to think about in terms of the draft and the trades as well. And I've got it laid out in this article. The big one's Kawhi Leonard, and I don't know how big it is. It was really interesting breaking news when it came out that he was essentially going to leave San Antonio. I don't even know if that's fact anymore.
Right.
I'm sure Popovich is doing his due diligence over there. But man, San Antonio. We talked Cleveland and Golden State, and not enough people are talking about the San Antonio Spurs, because the San Antonio Spurs, put Golden State aside, they're the best team of this dynasty of this decade.
Right.
I mean, they are the New England Patriots of the NBA.
I would agree.
Soft spoken, they do everything by the sort of right down the middle. Right, they're not one way or another. And they just win, and they win with anybody. I mean, Tim Duncan was the Tom Brady of this for a while. He's gone, and they're still doing fairly well. I mean, they're still a middle round seed. So, here's the interesting thing with Kawhi Leonard. He's got 1 year left on this deal. Then he can opt out. He will opt out. Let's not even beat around that bush. He's going to opt out after 2018. So this is a rental. This is a rental piece either for San Antonio or it's a rental piece for the team he gets traded to, which makes it a very unique situation because, yeah, he's a superstar, but he's been injured and he's got some mental issues. I think that's fairly safe to assume. Mm-hmm. So he's he's sort of a black cat in a dark horse situation. There is another player like that in the league right now who has been traded once, who has forced himself off a team, who has shown to be an all-pro.
Same money, right?
Who is on a team right now that maybe doesn't fully need his services because the guys that are around him showed they can do it without him, sort of. That's Kyrie Irving, who is in the exact same contractual situation as Kawhi Leonard. Now, that's a situation where you could literally go 1 for 1 and sort of snap it off right there and be done. Money would be perfect. They're both on 1 year rental contracts. It would just be a change of scenery with hopes that maybe they're the guy long term that could stay. But I don't think you'd need to give up anything more.
Well, let me pose something else interesting.
Okay.
The Celtics.
Yeah.
If they were to get Kawhi Leonard and Kyrie Irving, then what do they do with Hayward when he comes back?
Okay.
Same spot, right? Same position.
It is, but you certainly need something to go behind Irving or Leonard, right? In terms of depth, because you never know. All these guys are coming off an injury,
right?
So you can assume none of them are going to be playing 82 games next year. So I don't think it's wrong to have too much in terms of the guard position with Rozier and Hayward and Irving or Leonard here. But I just think if both guys need to change the scenery, right? I'm not sure that Kyrie does. Kyrie seems to be okay in Boston. Granted, he's said he's not going to sign an extension this year, but that's a
business,
financial,
right?
It's a business decision, is all that is. But if Kawhi needs a change of scenery, I don't think Boston would say no immediately. I think Boston would consider this based on what they saw out of their youngsters, certainly in the rental process. It's just a matter of, is he really better than Kyrie Irving? And I think that's a basketball question.
I think they play different games.
Yeah,
they play different games.
I think so. You know, and again, you think of the kind of system that Kawhi has played in. Yeah. All the reasons that you just said make you wonder. I don't want to say he's a system player because he's not. He's great. Yeah. But the system was so dominant around him. Yeah. Did the system make him look better than he is? And does he not? Is he not as great when he's in a different system?
Doesn't that fit Boston though? I mean, doesn't Boston have so many pieces in place?
Yes, and they have the very smart Brad Stevens system.
And isn't the knock on Kyrie? I mean, isn't the reason he had to leave Cleveland was that he just wanted the ball all the time, right? He wanted to be the guy, the showstopper. He needed to get away from LeBron, who had the same demands. And I don't know how that's going to fly on this Boston team that really has shown they can spread it out and everybody can play a role here.
And guys emerged when Kyrie wasn't there.
That's right. So if you've got a guy like Kawhi Leonard who doesn't need to go up there and score 40, right? Who loves having the ball, he's certainly going to be bringing the ball up the court for that team if he goes to Boston. But if you put pieces around him and Kawhi can sort of play nice, where Kyrie might have too much of an ego to do so, and that's speculation, obviously. But I just think it might be a better fit. right? If they need a change of scenery and he's going to a great team and he's not going to the West, we know he's not. Kawhi Leonard's not getting traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. Let's just stop that conversation because Popovich isn't going to kill his playoff chances by doing so for a year. But let's get back to San Antonio before we get off this topic, because San Antonio to me is a extremely interesting situation over the next 18 months. They are loading up cap space. They are loading up a situation where everything's sort of lining up for 2019. The salary cap's supposed to jump about $10 million. They've got LaMarcus Aldridge under contract for about 2 more years. All of their older guys, the Ginobilis and those guys, are going to fall off the wayside at that point. Kawhi's going to fall off, whether you're going to re-sign him or trade him or whatever's going to happen. But man, if you can get LeBron James to sort of play on a 1 year somewhere, whether it's Cleveland or wherever he's going to go, and then you've got guys like Durant and a few others out there who are also lining themselves up for 2019, look out for San Antonio, because you could build a super team with a super coach in a great city in a winning franchise, and San Antonio could go for another 5 years here and be legitimate contenders to Golden State, who, by the way, will also need to do some damages in 2019, like we've talked about, and don't discount Klay Thompson going to San Antonio on a free agent contract.
Wow, that's a lot there.
So swallow that.
Yeah, been a lot here. We'll save baseball for next week.
Yep.
All right. We got a lot into Julio Jones
Plenty
there.
of season left.
And there is plenty of baseball season left, right? We got a little bit longer to go,
left,
like half of it. All right. Thanks for listening to the SpotTrack.com podcast. Make sure you rate us in iTunes, right? And,
Check out the app as well.
Yes, and check out the SpotTrack app. Everything is SpotTrack.com. For Mike Giannetti, the founder of SpotTrack.com. Paul Peck, I'm Kevin Sylvester. Thanks for listening to the SpotTrack.com podcast.